Hello. So today I'll be talking about Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. I have two editions of this novel in two of my collections of Edgar Allan Poe. And I read this book 2 years ago. And it's Edgar Allan Poe's only novel, or I should say, only novel completed. He wrote another novel that he never finished called The Journal of Julius Rodman. I heard it's very similar in that he presents it as true, and then as you go on, you realize it's not. He was kind of a hoaxer, or would let things fly in the air that when they were first published, he wanted to put his name on them and present them as real. Never going really too hard into presenting them as too real or too much of a hoax, but seeing where the public would go with it. So yeah, it's his only novel. The print in this edition is kind of small, so it doesn't do justice of how much it takes up. So you can see that in the paperback it takes up this much, and it's a good 200 pages. I felt it was longer, probably because this was the edition I read it in, but the print's pretty small, or it probably feels like a good 300-page paperback. This edition has another version of it in, and I really enjoyed this novel. And it is a very influential novel, even though many people haven't read it. It influenced Herman Melville. It influenced, so in this edition it takes up this much. So again, it doesn't look like much, but the printing is also small in this, so it's a good 200 to 300 pages. So yeah, Edgar Allan Poe influenced Moby Dick. And you think of Edgar Allan Poe as gothic, horror, transcendental. You don't think of him as a nautical writer. And he influenced a lot of Jules Verne with this novel. And if you have problems getting into Moby Dick, as I do, because Moby Dick hyper focuses on a lot of little minor points. Maybe you want to read Arthur Gordon Pym first, because it flows well. It's much more of a faster novel and doesn't hyper focus on little details that might distract you in Moby Dick. So I recommend reading this first. I haven't read Moby Dick yet. I tried to, and I'm going to read it probably pretty soon. So part of this channel, this is a new video. I hate doing this because I watch a lot of other videos that extrapolate on what they're going to talk about first and then just start rambling about other stuff. But I got to do this because this is my first video. This is going to be my vlog video, my BookTuber vlog. I'm going to try to pace myself to read more and more and more. It was part of my New Year's resolution. And part of my New Year's resolution to help pace me more is to make a BookTuber channel. So yeah, I'll be doing this. I'll be reading a lot more. And Arthur Gordon Pym, Nantucket, it influences a lot of other stories. So, influenced, as I said, Moby Dick, but also influenced Jules Verne. And Jules Verne is I want to read more Jules Verne, but I don't speak French, and a lot of Jules Verne's stories are butchered in English in the cheaper, uncopyrighted versions, because in France he's considered avant-garde, but in England and America, where a lot of his work were published, he was considered more like child's literature, young youth literature. So they would like take passages out of Jules Verne. So Jules Verne was very prolific. So I'm a polyglot. I speak a couple of languages, but French is not one of them. But I guess because I'm going to become a vlogger on BookTuber stuff, I should learn French. And it's going to take me a while. I speak other languages, and I'll get into that another time. But yeah, so Jules Verne wrote a sequel. Another guy wrote a sequel. Let me read my notes. Charles Roman Dake wrote A Strange Discovery. That's in English. I can read that. But there was another French writer who wrote, probably butchering the name, La Conquête de l'Éternel by Dominique Andre, and I don't even know if there's a translation of that. So, I'll be coming back to this story, to Arthur Gordon Pym. I'll probably reread it. I read 2 years ago, so it's not fresh in my mind, but I did like the book, and yeah, I'll be rereading this because I'm going to be reading, the sequels and things influenced it. One thing I did read that was influenced by it, only very so slightly, which I'll be doing a review on probably pretty soon, is At the Mount of Madness. I read two big, larger H.P. Lovecraft stories, and I'm really into H.P. Lovecraft. One of the reasons why I went back to Edgar Allan Poe was because, that's where it all started. If you get into H.P. Lovecraft, you're eventually going to go back to, Edgar Allan Poe to get some of your fix. So I read At the Mountain of Madness, and there's these penguins in the At the Mountain of Madness that makes a sound, tekeli, or takali, that the birds, the seagulls in the Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. Now, if you haven't read the book, you don't understand this, but there's these seagulls that make that sound. And they're only ever so slightly mentioned in the Mountain of Madness, but I read this first before I got into that story, so I'd understand like 2 sentences of something that H.P. Lovecraft, mentioned. Oh God, the camera adds, 5 pounds. I probably look heavier than I am, and I got a cowlick on my hair, and like I'm really self-conscious. I wanted to like maybe make these videos not have my face, but then I said, nah, just go along with it. I'll lose weight. It's the winter, and a lot of the best booktubers have their face. Now I want to get you more franchise literature. I'm like more genre literature, maybe franchise literature, and maybe I get better at this. I'll monetize my videos, but right now, I'm not good at making these videos or editing. I need to get a better computer. My mom's sick. I got to take care of my mom. I can't really focus on editing videos, but yeah, if I get into more genre literature and more franchise literature, like silly stuff, and drawing out of things, or maybe more horror or fantasy, I'll make topical related videos. They'll have more images in them. I can always delete these videos where I look chubby, but I look handsome and chubby. But yeah, I'm very, very self-conscious. So, but a lot of the best booktubers kind of just tell you, they have their face up. Unless they start talking about franchise thing, then they like have a lot of images and stuff. So, let's start here, and I can always delete them. New Year's resolution is to get these videos out there one at a time. I'm reading a lot. I'll be making a lot of videos about things I already read in the past 2 years to, I give myself time to finish some of my new projects, because this is a whole New Year's resolution, making these videos, and I don't want to bother you with that. I hate when people get distracted and off topic, but so Edgar Allan Poe, yeah, Edgar Allan Poe. I like Edgar Allan Poe. However, if you read his stories chronologically in order, they're hard to get into. I mean, there's some good ones he has, but then there's a lot of stinkers. And frankly, he does something really annoying. He will start talking in French for a couple sentences in his stories, and if you don't speak French, and if you don't they'll be very, very short stories. It'll be 3 or 5 pages, stuff that was in periodicals that he made money off of. And maybe he's just showing off to show how smart he is and how much he speaks French and give me money. But I frankly don't understand a lot of his earlier short stories because they have dialogue in French. I don't know what's going on. Now, like everyone else, like every other American school child, I was traumatized by having to read some of his short stories that are inappropriate for middle schoolers, such as The Black Cat, The Telltale Heart, The Cask of... I don't want to butcher the name, but whatever. Those stories are not appropriate for little children. That was my first experience with Edgar Allan Poe, was being forced to read Edgar Allan Poe's traumatizing, very, very traumatizing short stories that are the better ones, but they're not for kids. And I think in high school I had to read The Mask of Red Death, but by high school, it's not that traumatizing. A plague that destroys all mankind. Would have been traumatizing as a middle schooler, but not so traumatizing as a high schooler. So I didn't read a lot of him, and I got into him by, beating about the bush with Moby Dick and H.P. Lovecraft, and I heard this story was influential. I picked up one day, I sat on the toilet and started reading. And I couldn't put it down, and probably a good video to make a good beginner BookTuber video on, because it's so influential of other works and you don't hear about it. Just like Moby Dick, it was criticized in its own time. The French obviously thought it was better than the Americans, and there's a lot of... It's really influential in France. There's paintings based on it, or it's hidden in images and modern paintings, and just the book itself, the copy of it in French. It influenced Moby Dick, and Moby Dick itself, Herman Melville was not regarded high in his time, and he was like a sleeper hit after he died. Moby Dick became a big thing. H.P. Lovecraft is another one. H.P. Lovecraft is lauded now, but he was really only known by a very, his inner circle of writers who wrote in weird fiction and some of his fans, but not in the greater literary world. So, now Jules Verne was inspired by him, but Jules Verne was famous in his own time. With this YouTube channel, it depends when I want to give spoilers or not. And because people haven't read the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym so much, of Nantucket, I really shouldn't give too many spoilers. But if I read something like Moby Dick, which a lot of people have read, and if you probably won't find my video as the first Moby Dick video, if I make one, and if you probably already have read Moby Dick, if you're going through Moby Dick addiction, Um, but no one really, I'll explain, I'll break down and spoil things that are more famous novels, but I really don't feel like uh, spoiling Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, other than saying that you'll be able to see this when you pick up the book, that it's broken up in different parts. So there's one part about the Ariel, which is one boat. There's the Grampus, which is so the first chapter is only like a short story. I won't give away that too much, other than they're like drunk and they're on this boat. Him and his friend, Augustus Bernard. But it feels like a short story. It feels like a potboiler. And Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket is very experimental for its time. You can see that, even though it's like you might not see that now, because there's so many adventure novels and nautical novels now. But there wasn't anything like that at the time. I guess there was other things. I'm probably just not as literate in 1700 literature to know, but there's not much I can think of off of my head. So yeah, the first chapter feels like a potboiler. It feels like a short story, and he was told by somebody to write a novel for money because people wanted to read novels. And he had to make money, had to write a novel for monetary reasons. So the first chapter seems like condensed at its own thing. And it's okay. Then chapter 2 from 13, that's on the Grumpus, the next ship. And that's riveting. That's where it gets good. That's where like a lot of the adventure is. Yeah, there's two parts that are very adventurous. Chapter 2 through 13 are just like really, really, really good. It feels like a lot of his horror novels. Then there's an airship called the Jing Guy, which has a bunch of British people from Liverpool. So chapter 14 to 20, its tone is different. It's not like, horror, adventure, survivalist anymore. It turns into like a more scientific expedition kind of thing. But then it goes back into the adventure thing. Again, from chapter 21 to 25, more Jules Verne-esque kind of things happen. And it feels like a Shaggy Dog kind of story. I'm sure he plotted it out at some point, but because he had to write for monetary reasons, he never wrote a novel before, it does like go through different areas, but it's like flows very, very well. And which is very interesting if you're like into narrative techniques and the development of someone who only writes short story, trying to write a novel as a first time, and who's considered one of the greatest short story writers in American literature. And most people don't read his novels. It's really interesting because it does flow well. And it's all in like a first person point of view. So that's part of the hoaxing. It was like presented as like, it's almost as, Edgar Allan Poe it's his stand-in. And it's a psychological, but it's not like psychological about too many other, characters. It's about his points of view. So stand-in is not very bad for this novel. It's good. But a lot of people criticize write-ins. But I think it works in this novel. The Wikipedia page on this says that he was influenced by a lot of Hollow Earth's theories. There was two guys he was influenced by. They claim on the Wikipedia page, Jeremiah N. Reynolds and John Cleve Simmons. Apparently, he had a lot of connection to these two men, and he was really influenced by them. And a lot of people say this novel is very influenced. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Um, there's an end where there's a cleft and they're going down to Antarctica, and there's a mysterious ending. There's a big figure in white. And a lot of people say, oh, the cleft or something, that there's a waterfall. I read it as a waterfall coming down, not like going into a hole. It was 2 years ago, but I don't remember anything about, Hollow Earth in this novel at all. So when you read the Wikipedia page, I was reading the Wikipedia page to refamiliarize myself with stuff I read 2 years ago, and I just don't see that. It's interesting. There's a lot of other Hollow Earth stuff, like Vril, which I read years and years ago. I forget everything about Vril, but Vril's all about like interior stuff. And there's a lot of Jules Verne stuff about a cavern in the earth that has dinosaurs and all kind of other animals. And I'm really into Edgar Rice Burroughs, who's really, really low literature, really, really adventure stuff. It works, it's good, but it's not high classics. I'm going to be reading both classics and like genre stuff. But there's so many, if you're like into Hollow Earth theory and you want to like, break down in your mind who came up with Hollow Earth first, you're going to be really disappointed by this novel, because this Wikipedia page is just going to, it leads you down the wrong path. I think that's one of the reasons why I was interested in reading this, but I got into, luckily I liked the book for other reasons, but I don't see any Hollow Earth stuff in this. Yeah, so another part about the Wikipedia page, if you read about race, it's hyped up a little bit. I don't want to get this channel political or any strikes, but it's not that bad. This novel was written in 1838. America's demographics and politics were very different. Even like 30 years ago in the 1990s, the demographics were different. That's just the case. So Edgar Allan Poe, the world was different. It wasn't as diverse. He didn't have experience with other people that from around the world. Cultures were more nationalistic and cut off. And I don't think the Wikipedia page does like the novel justice. Yeah, there's some kind of things we'd see with races today that's in there, but it's not as bad as stuff I read in other novels. I'll be talking about The Lair of the White Worm, which I read 2 years ago too, which is very vicious. It's a novel by Bram Stoker, and I'll have to apologize to Bram Stoker as well, because he was sick at the time, and when you read The Lair of the White Worm, and you read his other stuff, you can tell he's not mentally healthy as he's writing this stuff. It's a very, very strange novel. And I'll have to break down and talk around that, because that's one it's considered one of the worst novels, but it's also one of my favorites. But it's very, very strange. So there's bad stuff in that, but comparatively, I'm reading. Hold on. I'm reading another narrative, but this one's real. I'm reading the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. And, just things in real life were much worse than anything I can find in Edgar Allan Poe. It was the narrative. There's a couple sentences. So there's a couple parts that are. So one of the worst mutineers is a black cook, and he's said to be the more vicious of the mutineers, but it's only a couple sentences. He doesn't linger on it. And then there's a character that's very important called Dirk Peters, who's a half Indian, um, half bred Indian, half white. Uh, and Edgar Allan Poe kind of like describes him as like having more savage characteristics. That's in there, but it's kind of thematic because he comes an important character later, and he's a good guy. He's like he helps Arthur Gordon Pym get away, and um, it's not that bad. The worst part is when they get to the island where there's a lot of natives in the South Seas, and they're described as dark skinned, and they first seem good and then they turn bad. And I don't want to give away too much of the story, but there's some stuff about the other. But when I was reading the Wikipedia page, I think some people read way too much into what Edgar Allan Poe was trying to say. I mean, it's just an adventure narrative, and yeah, there's some dark stuff in it, but I read a lot worse. So, other things. Yeah, there was one peculiar thing. So, like decades later after he wrote this story, there was something that happened in history where there was an airship that like went down. Probably giving away part of the novel right now, but there's a ship that sunk, and 4 or 5 crew members survived, and the one was a kid named Richard Parker, and they had to draw lots to who would get eaten. This is a real story. It happened in 1884, so decades and decades after Edgar Allan Poe wrote his novel. But one of the person that drawed the short lot was Richard Parker, young kid, and then they had a trial in England. It's pretty famous in case law apparently. But there's a scene in the novel where the same thing happens. Now there's an older guy. It's not a young kid, 17-year-old kid, but it's an older guy. But his name is Richard Parker, and he gets eaten. So there's a lot of weird things in nautical novels predicting the future. The Titanic, there was a novel, I forget the exact name, but it was like the Voyage of the Titan, which I want to read too. I have that. I'm going to read that soon and probably put that on the list of things I'll review as I get all into nautical novels and nautical fiction. But yeah, so that's weird. If you want to if you're into weird things like Hollow Earth, and you're kind of upset that like Hollow Earth is not in there, but you're into like other weird paranormal things, maybe the Richard Parker thing will be good enough. There's a lot of loose ends. There's apparently a dog named Tiger. Tiger's in the novel. I remember Tiger, and I don't remember when Tiger disappears or why, but the Wikipedia page claims that there's no justification why Tiger disappears. He's just forgotten in the book. Yeah, so there's other themes. I don't want to give away more story, but there's something like in the cask where that's similar to other Edgar Allan Poe story about being buried alive. Premature burial. So he's not buried alive, but he's in a coffin or he's not in a coffin. He's like in like a coffin like box for a great period of the story early on, and it's very very interesting. If you're going to read more Edgar Allan Poe stories, especially if you try to read his stories in chronological order. I said that before, that they are hard to read in chronological order because some of his early stories are not that great, and they have French in them. You'll start to see other themes pop up if you read his his only novel first. So if you want to become a Poe scholar, maybe just go right into the novel and then read his short stories and poems and essays later. So, um, what else can I say? I'll be coming back to this novel probably in my vlog because it influenced so many things. It influenced H.P. Lovecraft. Others, I'm going to read the sequels. I'm going to read Moby Dick. I'll probably reread this. There's another novel called Pym, which is all about race relations. That's influenced by this novel. Oh yeah, so the Flying Dutchman. If you're also into like paranormal stuff, there's a scene with like a very similar. It's not paranormal at all, but it's you know ships that just kind of sail around with dead people. Um, Even like Robin Crusoe. Oh wait, he was in. They say a lot of this stuff inspired this book was by other literature. So there's a scene where they're in a cave, and that's apparently out of Robin Crusoe. He was inspired by the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which I read before. I read the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. They made me read it in high school. Yeah. Oh yeah, the HMS Resolution, which was James Captain Cook's ship. Apparently that influenced Edgar Allan Poe. Oh, and yes, another mystery is the Hollow Earth guy, Reynolds. What's his name? Uh, Jeremiah N. Reynolds. Apparently, when Edgar Allan Poe was found in Baltimore, delirious right before he died, one of the few words he says was Reynolds, and they think like maybe it has some connection to the guy he was really into Hollow Earth stuff with. I don't think that really was the reason why Edgar Allan Poe died. I think he got beat up, and there was some kind of political thing. There was a thing where they made people vote. It was around election day, and they would beat you up and take you to the polls and try to make you vote and get you drunk and stuff. And I think that probably it's a mystery, no one knows, but I think that probably had something to do with Edgar Allan Poe's death. Not that he him and his buddy found the secrets of Hollow Earth or anything like that, but there's another story that he wrote called HMS. Oh, wait, no, manuscript found in a bottle. MS found in a bottle. I remember reading that, but I don't remember anything about it. I would like to, be able to tie that in, and I don't really feel like, rereading the short story or go on the Wikipedia page and reading the stuff because I don't remember manuscript in the bottle, found in the bottle. But apparently that's related to this too, because it's an aeronautical thing. Yeah. The explosion scene is not talked about on the Wikipedia page. I remember there was this explosion when they're getting away from the natives, or maybe I'm misremembering things, but yeah, black teeth. Yeah, the natives have black teeth too, which is similar to I've seen Japanese people in Japanese history will sometimes darken their teeth for beauty reasons, but I don't think Edgar Allan Poe was thinking of that. Yeah, and he published this in the Southern Literary Messenger, and they never finished the serialization. He later published the rest later. So, I think this is a good video for my first vlog, my first BookTuber vlog. I'm in my kitchen. I'll probably be filming this somewhere else later. My future videos. My mom's sick right now, so I may have times when I'm not getting videos out as much now because I'm taking care of my mom. She's has ongoing medical issues. I'm a caretaker, and that's a big issue. let's see. Yeah, so good first video. Let's not waste your time anymore. There's not much else to say. I got all in.